I will call the September 9th Plan Commission meeting to order. Mr. Planning Manager, please call the roll.
Mayor Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Hogan is absent. Commissioner Burkhart.
Here.
Commissioner Haley is absent. City Engineer Morrow.
Here.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Here.
Commissioner Leone.
Here.
We have a quorum. Please rise, join the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this evening, back for a return engagement, is our new appointee, Alderwoman Sherry Hanneman. Sherry was on the Plan Commission a while back. But I'm happy she's joining us again. So thank you. Welcome. You know?
I know Commissioner Leon. I don't believe Commissioner Burkhart and I.
Adam, can you just give Alderwoman Hanneman a little elevator speech?
Sure, absolutely. I think on my fourth year now on the Plan Commission, I really think that's all that's of importance, right? Oh yeah, two of those. One foreign exchange student this year.
Oh, wow.
And I live in Alderman Barber's wonderful 5th District.
Okay. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, with that, we move to the approval of the regular meeting minutes of August 5th. Any additions or corrections? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C1 is a public hearing on a rezoning application from Stephen R. Mills of Bear Development for duplex condominium, single-family home development on about 12204 West Loomis Road. Mr. Planning Manager, you have a meeting notice or a hearing notice.
Notice is hereby given that the Plan Commission of the City of Franklin will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, September 9, 2021 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard in the Common Council Chambers at the Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin 53132. To hear public comment regarding an application by Stephen R. Mills, President of Bear Development, LLC, Boomtown, LLC, property owner, for approval of an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance zoning map to rezone certain parcels of land from R8 Multiple Family Residence District and C1 Conservancy District to R8 Multiple Family Residence District. The rezoning is to comply with the conditions of an approval of a certified survey map for the Ryan Road Duplexes project for the property located at 12204 West Loomis Road and the adjacent property to the east 12000 West Loomis Road. Tax key numbers 891-9997-000 and 891-9996-000. A map showing the property affected may be obtained from the City Council by way of request to the Department of City Development at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin 53132, during normal business hours. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the requirements of Section 962.237D2 of the Wisconsin Statutes and Division 15-9.0200 of the City of Franklin Unified Development Ordinance. Copy of the proposed ordinance in draft form is available and open for inspection by the public in the office of the City Clerk at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin 53132 during normal business hours. Public is invited to attend the public hearing and provide input.
It appears we have a properly noticed public hearing. The highlights are, this is very easy.
Yeah, basically do you have the map up? Okay. The green area on the map is the C1 district. It's Conservancy District. That district does not exist in the text of the UDO. And so as per operational procedure, anytime somebody comes in for a development proposal, we request they rezone their property to remove the C1 district, leaving the rest of the district as stated. So the proposal is essentially to remove a small triangle of C1 on this property and replace it with the baseline R8 district. And that's it.
Let's do the public hearing first, and then I got a question. Okay, with that, I will open a public hearing on this matter. Is there any citizen wishing to speak? Any citizen wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none rise, I will close the public hearing on this matter, and I'm going to jump in right away. So, Heath, why aren't we doing the rest of it?
The rest of what?
C1.
Around.
You mean on the rest of the, on the west
Yeah,
of the
we're
lot?
only doing a small portion that sits on the Bear property. Why aren't we doing the right-of-way for WEPCO and then the R8 on the other side of the?
Because those aren't subject to the development proposal or were subject to the CSM approval. The two lots that are in question where it's shown are the only two that were subject to the CSM where the C1 district was located. So it removes a piece, but it doesn't remove all of it because none of the rest of that was subject to the CSM approval.
So educate us. What would restrict us from not taking that entire C1 chunk on? The fact that there's no easement there? There's no natural resources protections or what?
Well, there's always natural resource protections, and usually coterminous with the C1 district are oftentimes larger than the C1 district. If you don't take it off, I guess it's really sort of immaterial. The applicant would have satisfied the condition of approval, having filed the application
That's
in
the
the first
inverse of
place.
my question. My question is, why aren't we doing the rest of it?
Because, well, if you're talking about this specific area, because not everybody there is owned by the same property owner. A larger matter is that the C1 district applies across the city, and that would be hundreds of parcels. And that would be
Okay,
extraordinarily expensive as a one district rezone.
I got that. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not being clear. We've done rezonings of multiple properties often in the city. And this one is two different property owners.
3.
Okay, 3. Multiple property owners. Why wouldn't the city have just applied and had Mr. Mills pay for it, but applied to do all of this and then just take that piece out of there? Okay, next time. Questions from the commissions? Any questions? Mr. City Engineer.
So maybe for my benefit and maybe someone else, we've never denied one of these. It's always automatic. Let's get rid of it. And like, as you stated, there's natural resource protections that usually are more stringent than what the C1 was imagined to protect. Now that we're going through the process to clean up our UDO, will this be something that we can fix, or will we still have to battle with this?
The intention of the UDO project is that ultimately we eliminate stuff like this, where the district is either, well, it doesn't exist in this case, or are situations where the district, as it was originally intended, is no longer compliant with the regulations that are in place. I don't want to go into detail on that, but I can spell it out later when we go through the UDO project.
We will fix it then.
Yes.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
I move to recommend approval of an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance zoning map to rezone Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map Number 9338 from R8 Multifamily Residence District and C1 Conservancy District to R8 Multiple Family Residence District located at 12,000 West Loomis Road and 12,204 West Loomis Road, approximately 15 acres.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The mayor is not necessary to vote because we have 4 affirmative votes. Motion carries. Okay, great, thanks. We'll move on to item D. Actually, D1, a detached accessory building addition site plan amendment for Gemco Electric.
I'll do the brief
Mr. Plan Manager.
brief discussion on this if Marion will run the board. The property, as you can see, is a rather triangular property, very narrow. The applicant, scan down one. Can you, Marion? Yeah, one slide, please. This is the site plan for that area. You see the inset there. That's the proposed building and location north of the existing use building. This is simply a storage building that's being located on this property. The The applicant has actually met with staff, Regulo, and engineering department on several occasions to figure out how to locate that building within the constraints of that property, which obviously means because of the odd design of the odd shape of the lot, it makes it very difficult to squeeze a building in there. And so he's done that, and you want to, Marion, next slide. And that's the proposed design of the building. It's not all that complicated. It's just a storage building.
Mr. Brzezinski? Okay, I was on the Plan Commission. I was sitting in this chair when we did this. This is well more than what we expected for that parcel. That's all I'm going to tell you. Well, the answer was, the answer is thank you, but obviously we're finished now, but that's more than we anticipated being on there. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Alderwoman Hanneman.
I move to adopt a resolution amending the site plan for property located at 11610 West Rawson Avenue to allow for a detached accessory building addition to Gemco LLC, doing business as Gemco Electric, an electrical contracting business, tax key number 749-999-000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The vote was 4-0. Thank you very much. We move on to the Parkland Acquisition Study Review and Recommendation.
That's me,
Ms. X.
with my colleague in this project, Alderwoman Hanneman, but I will again introduce the item to you. And the request this evening is that you, the commission, make a recommendation as to the general direction of which scenario you prefer, or if there is another recommendation you'd prefer to make. So to Common Council with the goal of selecting among these to plan for the use of impact fees in the future. So I'm just going to briefly reintroduce the item. So the City of Franklin has a number of park types. You have been provided with the final version of the Parkland Acquisition Study, which reflects the input of this commission, which was done on July 22nd. Vandewald and Associates joined you for their presentation and input session at that time. And we discussed parks in the City of Franklin. Among the set of recommendations, 4 types of parks were highlighted and are reflected in the scenarios proposed. A community level park, which ranges in scale from 25 to 99 acres. And generally speaking, has a 2-mile service area, although we all know that parks get used by the whole community. Neighborhood level parks are smaller than that, so roughly 5 to 25 acres with a 1-mile service area. That's roughly a 10-minute walk. Trails, which are a large component of the Corp, and then special parks are included in the recommendation set because there are lands that are available for disposition and for use for that purpose. So just to reiterate, this plan is based in the recommendations of the current comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which was adopted in 2011 and reaffirmed with the addition of Kayla's Playground and linear footage of trail in 2015. At this time, there are fairly limited options for new neighborhood parks in the developed part of the city, but the Corp does recommend several mini parks. Those are not among the current scenarios, but it's something to be aware of, that there is a goal to add parks throughout the city, and it has been suggested that could be done through the land division process, through land dedication and other mechanisms. I will note, of the recommendations of the Corp, apart from trail developments, only the future Lovers Lane Park has been purchased. So the parks that existed when this plan was drafted are the same as the parks that we have now, with that exception. And so just some information that was compiled as part of this process to help think through what the needs of the city are. So the Corp does reflect on this at length, but the consultants also prepared a service area map based on, I can't see this one well. Sorry, this of course is not as clear as it could be. So this is the existing public outdoor recreation facilities. They did add Water Tower Park, as that purchase had been completed under the previous scope of this project. And so just something to think about, thumbs up, just something to think about with this. Some of the recreation areas that are here are passive. So this swathe is the Root River corridor. The county owns much of this and its primary environmental corridor, and therefore has limited programming options. So it's floodplain. You can put park facilities in the floodplain, but Fremming Park is here, but this service area, although there is a large service area here on the Root River Park, there are no amenities here. The same holds true for the Franklin Savannah. This is a natural resource. And so you can see that there's parks within the neighborhoods, but a large area that is underserved by parks, also in the northwest corner. So the consultants also prepared this information over a future land use map. So the comprehensive master plan, the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan flows out of the master plan. So it's based on the land use goals for the city that were established in the future land use map and the comprehensive master plan. And you can see that there is a future land use intent for areas of natural resources in the southwest portion and residential growth. So the Corp is based on an anticipation of growth in this area. And also there is existing residential lands and future commercial development. So these are some things just as background information to consider while evaluating the scenarios. The service areas again are here. So this is the planned map, and you can see that the Corp did intend to fill some of those gaps. This is the southwest, or this is the Conservancy Park, so the waste management lands that have been discussed in the report. This is that park, a community park adjacent to the Franklin Savannah. The recommendation is that it be somewhere in this general area, and a number of smaller parks, including the future Water Tower Park, and other parks as infill in other parts of the city. And it is important not to forget that the Corp also recommends trails. So one of the scenarios in the study is to just do trails. There's some benefits to that. It is a category of use of impact fees that is eligible for a high use of impact fees. So you can, under the current impact fee study, use a large amount of impact fees relative to the required match. So that scenario is offered as one option. So some things that are currently kind of in the works are, as you know, the 116th Street Trail, the Ryan Creek Trail. There is a master planning process, a contract that was executed with Grafe. And this master planning process has already kicked off. And so there are other trail options here on 92nd Street. The purple trails are the approximate location of snowmobile trails. They're purple. And then this would theoretically be a county trail, which is the extension of the Oak Leaf, which we hope will be a future trail in the city of Franklin. As a planner, one of the things that's cool about the trail system is that there is an opportunity to create a loop in the future. Some of that would probably occur outside of the city, but that's just an aside. So generally speaking, some of the key feedback that was received through the input process is that there's a desire for a community or neighborhood park with amenities in it. Areas of passive recreation, trails and places to walk and enjoy nature, but also the Parks Commission frequently receives requests for new amenities in parks, and the current park system has pretty limited capacity to add them. And so there is also a desire to connect the parks and open space as well as the city as a whole through trails. And as I mentioned, the desire for amenities. So, and amenities are something that is very much a part of the Corp. There's quite a lot of stuff contemplated in the Corp, but that specific discussion isn't part of the discussion tonight. It's where would you put them were we to purchase a parcel of land. So with that in mind, some of the targets that were discussed was a parcel of 20 acres or more and most of the scenarios are of that scale. The southwest quadrant of the city was a recommendation taken by the Parks Commission via motion. That was based on some of the discussion that was had with them and the background shared about the comprehensive master plan. And also the opportunities that are there for lands adjacent to the Franklin Savannah to create a large conservancy and park area. There are waste management lands. So I will show a map of this shortly, but there are lands that are to be dedicated to the city for conservation purposes, but also to be a park. And there's some opportunity to hopefully program that, although the conservation easement may limit the scope of that. A connection to Ryan Creek and trail connections there throughout the city. So just a reiteration of the strategy here, because the thing about the park impact fees is this isn't a one-shot deal. You're going to make a recommendation about the next step, but this is an iterative process. We're going to have to do this again as a city because the fees continue to accumulate as development continues. So at this time, there is another large pool of funding that will need to be spent down through the capital process after the 2022 budget year. And so this question is, what do we do next? What are we thinking about next? So this is the rate, the percent, I did not label this slide, but this is the percentage of impact fee eligibility by park type. And as I alluded to earlier, some are able to use a larger percentage of impact fees. So in the scenarios that are presented, each of these will have the calculation done with this. But you can see that trails are by far the most eligible for the use of impact fees, where community parks, although they're much desired, are less eligible, and that creates a greater fiscal burden for the general fund of the city to make a decision about how the city is going to use its available tax revenue. And over the next 5 years after 2023, those fees, the impact fees collected, will total an amount currently of $2,353,767. So the 2023 line is zeroed out because the 2022 impact fees are subject to a deadline. There will not be fees available after that. There's a large pot, and then 2023, there's a relatively small pot that's accounted for in current planning. So this, again, is what to do next. So I now bring us to the scenario. So again, 2.3 million in impact fees, and that is enough funding to potentially make a large acquisition of some type, bearing in mind the match requirements. So with that, as I mentioned, the first scenario of the set is trails only. So all of these scenarios assume a land value of $40,000 per acre. At the time, that was considered relatively conservative. Obviously, there can be significant variation throughout the city, and that's something to bear in mind, but it's, for the purposes of this exercise, was considered a good estimate. So over the life of the current fees that we know are in hand, not accounting for expected future development, this scenario would require a city match of $1,442,000 with a little bit of leftover. And part of the reason this is important is because any fees left over must be refunded to the current property owner of whatever person is living in the house that paid it. So we have to figure out whose money is left over.
No, we'll find a spot for that.
Well, so this is a small amount. They vary. Some of the scenarios do have a total impact fee that is greater, so we would be it reflects a negative number. But again, these fees are something that are assessed on all new residential development, and so the expectation is that they will continue to accrue until the plan is done. And so you can expect that even if there is a negative number, that apart from the much important considerations of the city budget, that those fees will also be accumulated in future. So would you like me to take this scenario by scenario and discuss the merits of them individually with the commission, or do you want me to run through all of them and you can talk them through? What's your preference?
run through them all real quick.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so this is trails only. This obviously has the lowest match requirement of the set. So it has that advantage. And the city engineer can probably speak a little more eloquently to the relative costs of trails to construct. But generally speaking, this option is kind of aligned with the fees on hand. Of course, fiscal consideration is not the only important consideration in a parks plan, but it's certainly relevant here. So,
Which is a good time for me to make the statement that I haven't made all along. It's important that the commissions who are reviewing this take their expertise and apply it to the task at hand. And really, this slide is useful information, but it ought be very little bearing on the recommendations and opinions that you have, because we're going to look to the Plan Commission to look for overall citywide planning of parks, as opposed to, I got to spend $3.2 million or whatever the heck the number is. Similarly, the Parks Commission, we look to them to look for the recreation activities and the park activities of the city, not spending the dollars. The dollars are for the common council to spend based on your recommendations. So I would ask that you look at this from a planning perspective, not a financial perspective. That's what Alderwoman Hanneman and I are going to do.
thank you. That's a very important
Thanks.
point. So, and as was shown in the slide reflecting the planned facilities, there are a large number of City of Franklin trails that are planned for in the Corp. So that amount, the linear footage, is based on population estimates. I expect that those will be somewhat different in a future version of the Corp, but the fact remains that these are a desirable amenity. So for scale, this is an example of a community park. Lion Legends Park is about 41 acres. Scenario B is a 30-acre community park, and this scenario and a few of the subsequent ones are community parks, so just a sense of the scale. A previously planned community park could be placed in the southwest quadrant. So this match requirement is 64%. So with the total, there would be a net negative potentially, but a community park. So this is considering not only the land acquisition, which is based on the size of the park would be a little bit north of $1 million, but also considers a large amount of funding for park amenities. And as we discussed earlier, the input process has shown and the community has shown that there's a demand for amenities. So while it is one of the lower use of impact fees, this is a very much desired option from the feedback that we receive at Parks Commission.
Does this option contemplate use of land from either Waste Management or MMSD, or is this purely purchased land?
This is a purchase.
Adjacent.
Yep. So you could theoretically, depending on the siting choices, it could be adjacent to something else. But there is a subsequent scenario that is specific to the waste management lands.
Okay, thanks.
So again, a large match requirement. An 80-acre community park, so in this case, a very large park with lots of room for lots of cool things, and also probably quite a significant amount of natural resources and trails and that kind of thing. And this, again, has the same match requirement. So this would be a more costly option overall. This maintains the amount for park amenities. And as a note, amenities, the impact fee rate available for an amenity within a park is based on the type of park that it is. So the match rate is the same. So this is an alternative scenario to have a very large park with many things in it. But it would also then consider and take into, would eat up some of future impact fees as well. So the waste management lands, the mayor, one of the scenarios that's been discussed as part of this study and as part of the general planning for the city is that the landfill has dedicated a number of parcels to the city of Franklin as a conservancy and a buffer to the landfill. We have not taken possession of those lands yet, but they are available for our future use. So they're the parcels in green on this map. So this is the landfill, Oakwood Road. The Franklin Savannah is here. And then these parcels in green are dedicated to the city with the intent of this is in the Corp as a conservancy. There is a conservation easement on this, and at this moment, I am not totally sure what the conservation easement will allow for in terms of development. But again, with the location of the Savannah here, there is an opportunity for potentially a large conservancy and active recreation areas, including this green parcel in the southwest portion of the city. The city engineer has already had someone go out there to do wetland delineations on some of this land. At one point, there was an eye towards using these properties for wetland banking. They do not meet the requirements of the Department of Natural Resources to be a certified, that's probably not the right word, but a wetland bank that would be one that the DNR would include in their own roster for mitigation.
May I explain that?
Sure. Yes, please.
They could be a location where they would be certified. They are not a desirable location where DNR would help fund and make that possible. So if the city wanted to go above and beyond and do the extra effort it would take to make this a wetland banking, we could do so, but it's not very likely that DNR would help in that endeavor.
So given that that use is not necessarily feasible any longer, there are other options for the land. So this scenario contemplates improvements to the waste management lands as a community park with the inclusion of amenities. So it does have leftover impact fees. I think we can figure out what to do with them, but this scenario envisions trails and also trying to incorporate amenities into this park. So there's not a land acquisition component to this. Those parcels total 160 plus acres. But another piece of this is that with the Franklin Savannah, the properties in the city of Franklin, and immediately south, you may have noticed there's this green area. The town of Raymond also has a dedication, and this is a conservancy. So there's a trail contemplated in the Corp down 112th Street. So this could be a very lovely, well, one side of it would be very lovely on 112th Street. But it is also a buffer to the rest of the community from the landfill. So scenario E is to implement the Corp with a 60-acre community park and trails. So this is a mixed option that includes land acquisition for a community park and then the land acquisition and improvement of trails. And so it's kind of recognizing that the Corp anticipates these future activities and also that a community park is desired. It's that middle path between a small park and a large community park with the inclusion of trails. So this does, again, eat up future anticipated impact fees, but it has the benefit of having a low match requirement for the trails component. And the trails, again, there's a potential to create a nice loop. So, and then a neighborhood park. So Pleasant View Park is probably the most used example of a neighborhood park. And just to clarify, Pleasant View Park is the parcel that's shown here. The Victory Creek Trail immediately to the east of it is a different park, even though it makes the park effectively much larger, but those are also a conservancy. It's a prairie restoration area and floodplain protection. So there are limitations on how those properties can be used, trails being one of the ways that they can be used. So it's an example of a very popular neighborhood park.
I'm going to say it. A park is a park. I don't care where we got it. It's a park. That is the largest park the city owns. Pleasant View Park.
With Victory Creek?
Yeah. There is no separate Victory Creek Park. It's all Pleasant View Park and Trail, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
At some point, politics in the city is going to allow that to happen. And we're going to, well, whatever. and we're going to recognize it as a big city park. I don't care if you call it neighborhood or city, it's the biggest park the city owns.
And
We're
it's
calling it a neighborhood park.
significant. Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
And Victory
Politics
Creek is
over.
designated as a special park because of the conservancy features, but the land that's there is, the community is using it very actively, so it's a point well taken. So this scenario proposes 2 parks, a community park, a very large park, and then a neighborhood park. So 2 parks of pretty different sizes, but doesn't consider amenities for those parks. So there are pros and cons to all of these scenarios. There is another option, which we as planners always remind people of, which is that you could do nothing, which is which is not advisable. So the outcome of that would be that you would not add amenities to the community, that your community is very proud of their parks, and also that we would have to rebate the fees that have been accrued as they expire over an 8-year time period, which is mandated by state law. So if the fees are not used, yeah, plus interest. So if they're not used, we have to pay them back to the current property owner. So this is possibly too much information, but they're accrued by month, and they would be repaid by month to the address that they had been accrued in. So that's how that would work.
Okay, before Alderwoman Hanneman takes over, you didn't know you were going to do that. Anyway, a couple of planning kind of considerations and thoughts that roll through my head as the mayor. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things going on. There's a lot of moving parts to all of this. There's lots of different conversations. Unfortunately, we haven't included some groups that we should have as much as we should have. But this is one of those items where it's all hands on deck. We got to figure this out. And so everybody's been trying to figure it out. So I appreciate the input you guys are going to give tonight. One of the things that's been going through my head for the longest time is because we have MMSD lands, which are conservancy kind of things, which are very limited use, and we have waste management lands that are intended to be limited use, and we have our own natural areas. I would like to see at some point that we officially brand Franklin parks, trails, and natural areas and call it that and make that a brand. I think that's important for us as a plan commission. It's important for the city, and I think it's important for the parks because we have these amenities. It's part of our community. Let's sell it. So that's one thing. Relative to land banking and the waste management lands, I think all of you have experienced this wetland mitigations things. The reality is a developer will get a wetland mitigation plan together that we'll approve, and they'll write a check to some developer, some land bank up in Toma or something. My goal has always been keep the money at home, keep the water in our watershed. That was my intention always for the waste management lands. Now, the city engineer rightly says DNR is not going to help us pay for it. Well, that's true on paper. I don't know that we really care, but that's something that I think us as plan commissioners ought to consider for some of that land. Maybe not all of it, but some of it. And then there's one other thing going on that's still really pie in the sky, but I think you've all heard me say it one time or other. You don't put the city park in a corner of the city or at the border of the city. You and I have had that conversation. I believe that a city park for the entire city needs to be in the middle of the city. So everybody thinks Legend Park is too small. Maybe it is. But then you look around and you see There's 180 acres of tree nursery directly in the center of the city. In the center of the city. And its southern border is another 90-acre park owned by the county. So I entered into a conversation with Mayor Barrett that subsequently ended up with a conversation with the Department of Public Works city engineer, with our city engineer. There may be an opportunity, pie in the sky, right? Nothing happens until the ink dries. But to do either a land swap or a purchase or some other arrangement to acquire the tree nursery, whether we're swapping for MMSD, I'm sorry, not MMSD, waste management lands, or sell some, pay them for some, whatever the arrangement is, have a big city park in the middle of the city. Then if you're a pessimist like me, I believe, and it's common discussions through most of the communities in the county, Milwaukee County is going to be out of the parks business, out of the smaller park business in a couple of years, because they just can't afford to maintain them. So would they have a Fleming Park in their inventory? I would guess not. They'll have Whitnall, they'll have Lakefront, but probably not Fleming. So that offers us another opportunity. Just put these all out there so you know what's being discussed. None of it is real today, but it's being discussed. And you need to have that in the back of your head as you're looking at the city and where you think parks ought to go. So that's my little bring you up to speed thing. Alderwoman Hammond.
I'd be happy to yield to Commissioner Burkhardt. I believe you had a question, sir?
Yeah, it was just one quick question, and I don't think anybody here really has much appetite for the do-nothing scenario, but I just wanted to clarify that the report indicated that you had to pay the entity that originally paid the impact fee, not the current property owner, which even makes that more onerous of a option, I think.
Plus interest. So then you got to figure out what date they did the building inspection.
And who they were and where they are now.
And
Yeah.
some are not even alive anymore.
And the law doesn't tell us what happens then.
So a whole lot of money would go into unclaimed funds at the state level.
I just wanted to clarify that. That was a question I had, discrepancy.
Thanks for making my evening, Adam. Mr. City Engineer.
Mayor, I keep forgetting. Mayor, I keep forgetting to ask this question when I see you normally, but when do we expect that the waste management landfill will be full and you know, if we had a park or something next to it, you know, that'd make a nice big hills and, you know, climbing.
When is the landfill going to be full?
Yeah,
I think the estimates I've been hearing is 40 years.
40 years.
But my guess is they have a little expansion room, but not much.
Right.
So let's say 60.
Okay. Yeah, is there a formal plan? I don't think I've seen a formal plan for a closure plan on, like for example, the quarry has, you know, what happens to the quarry when the quarry ceases to be.
I believe there is such a plan. I don't know who has it though.
All right.
The city attorney may have it.
Right.
You might want to ask the city engineer.
I'll ask him.
Alderman Henneman, you want to comment and direct and guide?
Yes, thank you. And first off, I really want to thank Marion for her leadership and time and effort and expertise that, and your project management skills that have gone into this. Although I was the elected lead on this contract, really Marion was the chief on it. So thank you. And I've enjoyed working on it together and going through this process. And I think going through this process has also sparked a lot of conversations among other departments in the city, you know, be it engineering or administration, finance, and really looking at our long-term capital plans that I think we'll be hearing more about as we start to get into the budgeting process. But at the end of the day, it's so important that we have something in place, a base plan, so that when people come to our city and they pay these impact fees, they say, what are you going to do with these? what's the plan? We have to be able to show them, look, this is the consideration that we've given over the future growth that you are contributing to and how we are going to continue to improve the recreation and amenities in the city. So to that end, that's really what this is geared towards. What my hope is that the commissioners that are here tonight would maybe give some insight into their thoughts on what you think would be a good usage of the impact fees and what type of parks or trails or mixer thereof going through these scenarios. Now, that's not to say that a recommendation of a scenario means this is exactly the kind of money we want spent on X. These are somewhat conceptual in informing, okay, if we want to go after a 60-acre community park, then let's start looking for that piece of land and see how much is that going to cost, what types of amenities could we put there, does it have the type of access that we're going to need, how is it going to serve the service area and the connectivity and all of that sort of thing. So to sort of dovetail off of what the mayor said, this is not a, yes, we want to spend $4 million for a community park or whatever it might be, or the $5 million on just trails. So this is a very high level planning. So the hope is then that we can take the input from this meeting tonight and take it back to the Parks Commission on Monday night, at which point the Parks Commission will recommend, or at least I can't speak for the commission now, the hope is that they will recommend the adoption of this plan with an interest geared towards maybe not a specific recommendation, but maybe a ranked recommendation of the scenarios to council. That can be used by engineering and by the Plan Commission and the Parks Commission as we're looking to make these types of purchases down the road. Does that make sense, the way I kind of explain that? I have my favorite scenario, but I've been working on this for 6 months, so I don't know that I want to put it out there. I'd like to hear the.
Come on, no guts, no glare.
Yeah, no.
How about this for an
if
idea?
you really want to hear it, I will. But
Let's take them off the table rather than picking one.
okay, and that's fine. However, works for the commissioners, but I really want to hear the input. And so that Mary and I can, and from the engineer too, so that Mary and I can go back and say, these are the thoughts.
Mary, can you put up the list of options?
I have a list of just the scenarios, and it is. Sorry, I made extra
That one there.
slides
There you go.
in case you had.
So the one that's not on there, we all agree shouldn't be on there, is do nothing. Okay. So, all right, opinions. Mr. City Engineer.
So I spend a lot of time here at City Hall, but this is one of the few opportunities I actually get to vote on something. So I'll make my thoughts known, I guess. As an avid bicycle rider, I ride a lot. Last year I rode down to Lake Geneva. A couple months ago I rode up to Manitowoc. It's really cool when you go through communities and they have trails that can get you through the community. I think that most, at least folks that I see those progressive communities. When you hit a community like Franklin where there's not a trail and you have to ride in streets, it's pretty backwards. That's, I think, what most folks who ride bicycles would think of Franklin. When you come to Franklin, you can't really ride through it. It's really tough to navigate through it. So, but as much as I like trails, and I think we should focus on trails, I will say that we have a lot of requests, whether it be pickleballs, baseball courts, or whatever. We just don't have any room for something big. At Parks Commission 2 months ago, we had somebody ask for a cricket pitch. It's not that big of an area. We have no place to put it. Absolutely no place. So we need to find some large fields where you can do some active athletic field kinds of things. And I think we should really focus on trying to find some of the bigger parcels where you can do a complex of large field kind of activities.
So you weren't helpful. You're supposed to say which ones you don't want.
So
But let's do your
I don't like A, trails only, although I like the trails. So I would like to see something with trails plus scenario E or F, where you have a large place.
Okay, that's your F. Let me show you something first, though. This is Lions Legend Park. Here's the tennis courts, the fire department's right here, the baseball diamond in Legend 2. This is a soccer field. I've lived here since 1988. I don't think I've ever seen anybody walk on it, much less play on it. So I just want to raise the attention to Miss X and to you. It's here.
I can't comment on that, Phil, but I can see every other place. There's practicing for soccer, or especially like behind the fire department. I mean, I think this afternoon there was a group out there, and it seems like 4 times a week you'll see a group of people out there. So I don't know about that other soccer field.
By the way, that's not a knock.
No.
It's just saying we got space there that we can utilize right away.
Well, if we can repurpose, that would be fine.
Yeah. So anyway,
That's never been mentioned.
who's next? Commissioner Burghardt.
I'm also supportive of the idea of trails. I think connectivity throughout the community is important, and I would echo what the city engineer said about trying to ride a bike through Franklin. I think it can be dangerous at some points, especially if you're trying to ride some distance. That being said, I also like the idea of having some more space for some of these activities, whatever they may be, that may be popular in the future. I don't really see trying to improve the waste management adjacent property. I don't know that that's the direction that the city would want to head in there. So if we're looking for ones that I would definitely take off, I don't think scenario D would be one that I would have much interest in. I think scenario E is probably my favorite, followed by scenario A, because I do think the trails and the connectivity is probably going to be the most important component of this.
Commissioner Leon.
So I got some conflicting guidance from the mayor. He said to use my expertise, and I have a finance degree, but to leave the budget to the city council, and I will. I'll go with the latter.
It's all part and parcel. I'm just saying don't focus on it.
So a couple things. One,
And since when have you ever done anything that I've asked you to do?
all right, yeah, there are a couple of things we'll disagree on. One, I've lived here since 2013, and I have seen people use that soccer field for soccer several times. Yeah. That said, as I look through these and understanding cycling and hiking and other activities, I use them for some of the same purposes. I don't know what portion of the overall population that represents in Franklin or beyond, but I think that the improvement of parks would be used by a greater portion of the population than focusing on cyclists. It's not a knock on cyclists. It's just, that's one segment. One area that the mayor and I disagreed in the past, and we'll disagree again, is I don't think it needs to be in the city, center of the city. Not that Fromming Park might not be a good option based on some changes coming up with the county, but we can have a park where it fits. And, the size of the city, people will travel to that. And I think you even alluded to that earlier. So whether it's in the southwest quadrant or somewhere else, people in Franklin will come out to use it, and we will welcome our neighbors to come and use it as well. That said, as I think I'm going to be reiterating what I said the last time, B and F are what I think are 1 and 1A. If there's a way to do something with trails in there, I wouldn't be object to it. But I do think that those will get the greatest usage. We've talked a little bit, more than a little bit, we've talked in the past couple of years about pickleball courts. I guess the pickleball courts that I've seen up until very recently, I haven't seen them used a lot, but I do know that they are. I've heard vocal supporters of it, but I think that there are a lot of other uses, and I think this is something that came out of the last time we discussed this, like ice rink and other activities, playgrounds, and something that could be used for cricket pitch, looking at serving more than those who are passionate about pickleball or whatever other activity. And I guess I'll get a little more specific than 1 and 1A. I would say scenario B would be my 1, F would be 2, and then I wouldn't tend to consider the rest all that much. I've been to communities with large parks, and outside of a couple times a year, they feel very empty. In fact, I was just in Germantown a couple of weekends ago for one of my children's activities, and 1 or 2 of the fields were being used, and the rest were not. And this was on a Saturday in the summer. So, as part of our charge is the best use of space. Not that open green spaces aren't good, but I don't think they have to be huge. I think that the parks that we have, that we've referenced tonight, Lions Legend, Fromming Park, I think is a good example of those, not a city park, and Pleasant View. There's a small portion of Pleasant View that seems to be used, and the rest of it is just open. And again, there's a little bit the opposite. I'm saying it's not a bad thing, but I don't know that it's necessarily the best use of space. So, yeah, from my perspective, B and F. But most importantly, I want to know what Alderwoman Hanneman's number 1 is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I appreciate the insight and the feedback there. My favorite scenario is E. And I'm a strong believer in the connectivity of our community. The Oak Leaf Trail is pretty heavily used, especially on certain nice days or weekends. It can be downright dangerous if you're bike riding, or there are a lot of rollerbladers, longboarders, you name it. There's a lot of activity down there, and it's great. I love walking through there and, seeing the friends and neighbors and letting the dogs make friends and all that other kind of good stuff. It's a great amenity to our community, and I would like to see more of that, more opportunity to enjoy some things like the Franklin Savannah that we maybe can't do improvements to, but there are some really interesting features there that most people don't know about or get to enjoy. And I think that would bring, also through that proposed Ryan Creek Trail, a lot of good connectivity between the new neighborhoods that are coming in down there. And I agree, I have family members who are also bikers, bicyclists, I should say, as opposed to motorcyclists, who have had accidents on the roads. And so I like the idea of adding to the safety for that segment of our citizens who like to do that. I much prefer the 60-acre community park to the 80-acre community park. And I agree with you, Commissioner Leon, that sometimes bigger isn't always better. But I would like to see that 60-ish acre park developed in such a way that it maybe offers opportunity for some of the amenities that we don't have elsewhere, such as the cricket pitch or an ice rink, but we might be able to fit that somewhere else, I don't know. Or the 8-court pickleball complex that has been so desperately wanted as that activity continues to grow. So that, and because I believe suiting the needs of the community, scenario E would give us also the biggest bang for our buck in terms of match and dollars spent against the match. So there you have it.
So we all follow instructions really well. I was hoping we would be knocking things out, and you're picking your favorites. It all works out to be the same things.
Well, I think no one chose C,
No one chose any
and no one chose,
F.
D.
and no one chose D, and no one chose F. No, F was your second choice, though.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, D and E, excuse me, D and C and D were not.
So
Yeah.
C and D.
And
Wha-
A,
while Marion and Heath tabulate, let me offer some additional information to the Plan Commission as Plan Commissioners. You all know what this area is right here, right? This is the Crossroads Trade Area right up in the corner here, otherwise known as Myers, Wally World,
no man's land.
No Man's Land. This is now owned by a company called United Financial Group, who happens to own all of that, Forest Hill Highlands. They presented a concept last night that relates to this, to us in planning, and tonight's topic of conversation, that would include two 150-unit apartment buildings in L shape here, like this, with 8 acres in the front dedicated to the city for public purposes. They're envisioning an amphitheater here, ice skating rink and gathering area here, warming house or whatever here, and maybe a senior meeting spot, whatever. It's all concept, right? But here's 8 acres right at the center, right at the entrance to the city. So that's coming on. Also included in there is trails throughout their project that will link up to trails that Glenn's building for us. This area here, is the new, what do we call it? Lover's Lane Park?
Water, yeah, the water.
We got to be careful with Lover's Lane
We
too,
haven't
but,
officially named it yet, have we?
but no.
It has not been named.
So this is the Lover's Lane Park or Water Tower Park or the park on Highway 100.
I'd call it Goose Park because that
Yeah.
wetland looks like a goose. Goose
Yeah,
Lake Park.
Works for me. So that's happening. Then down here,
If I could add the Water Tower Park or Lover's Lane Park, that's forced to be passive because DOT is limiting the number of parking stalls for that one. So although it's a big park, and I can imagine people are thinking about the 8-court pickleballs and so forth, that won't happen unless we want to spend a lot of money to improve a private gravel driveway.
and you all know this as, what is this, Ryan Wood or Ryan Meadows?
Ryan Meadows.
Ryan Meadows subdivision for Bear Development, with this being residential here. There's a detention basin here and a natural area that kind of extends down as a big thumb. That's being deeded to the city as green space. So that's coming too. There's a proposal, well, you've been through the proposals for the various subdivisions here. The discussions now with the developers, which we've always done, but I think the alderman and I have kind of ramped it up with discussions about, okay, where are you putting your trails? Where are you putting the little parkland? So that's happening all throughout down here, because the developers who are developing this parcel, and this parcel, all are believers in public amenities. So, Mr. City Engineer.
If I could just add one more thoughts on trails, it's really becoming more more than a park issue. If you spend any time on the Oak Leaf Trail, there's a amazing amount of electric bicycles. You walk in Wheel and Sprocket, they've got a lot of nice electric bicycles. People are actually starting to use those really for their transportation issues because it doesn't take a lot of effort to really pedal. If you go down to our business park, industrial park, and lunchtime, it's hard to not hit somebody because they're out walking everywhere during a lunch hour. So I think that our corporate parks, our industrial parks, we need to really make sure that we get amenities for those folks. And again, so trail's not really a park issue there, but it would be well used for need for them.
So Marion, where are we at here?
3 votes for scenario E, making it the most preferred. Scenario F had 2, and then scenarios A and B each have 1.
So would the Parks Commission accept that as a recommendation?
You can take a motion if you like, or I'm happy to present the commission's feedback in this format.
Did you count mine as an A?
So,
You didn't count mine as an A, did you?
Say again?
You did not count mine as an A. I expressed interest in trails, but I was not interested in trails only.
No.
Okay, all right.
No.
I think so.
yeah,
Commissioner
that
Warren.
was Commissioner Burkhardt.
Yeah, after listening to Alderwoman Hanneman, I would revise mine that I would rank E as my most preferred, then B, then F. So E, B, F for me.
All right, so we've agreed to not take action on this? Or a motion to recommend to the, well, Sherry, you can adjust.
You just put as
I'm just reading this here. I move that the Plan Commission endorse the adoption of the Parkland acquisition study with special consideration given to options in descending order of priority: E, option F, option A, and option B contained therein. Meaning the
I guess I'm
most-
confused about how A got in
I'm
there.
sorry, with the most preferred options being option E in order of preference. Option E, option F, option A, and option B.
The only thing I'm confused about is how A is in there.
A is my number 2.
A was your number
Yeah.
2. Okay. All right.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Discussion? Were you okay with that? All those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay.
This is great.